And hello, I'm Gordon Kazi, also sometimes known as Gordy Canuck, and I'm putting out this video for younger voters. I've been talking a lot on my channel about the Canadian election that's coming up. It's on April 28th, and I wish everyone a happy Easter Monday. It is now Monday, the 21st of April, Easter Monday. Um, I just got home. I just went to a family gathering, my extended family, my wife's side of the family, and something occurred to me. We had some conversations at this family Easter get together, and I got home very late. It was a 4+ hour drive along the 401 from Mississauga into my little area of Ontario called Northumberland County. If you're not familiar, you got to go to Oshawa and then keep driving east for another hour. Head toward Kingston, past Oshawa. Normally, it would be an hour drive, but we got held up for 2+ hours in there was a horrific car accident apparently on the 401 somewhere around a town called Newtonville. And explaining the voting process to younger Canadians based on a conversation I had earlier today. At that get together, I asked a couple of younger nephews, two of my sister in law's sons, who are university age, if they were going to be voting in the coming election. They both said yes, definitely. I said, great. I said, who are you voting for? And they both said, Poilievre, voting for Poilievre. And I said, very good. And we continued with the Easter festivities, taking pictures, eating, all the stuff you do. And then later I had a conversation with those two nephews, and I said, do you know who you're voting for? And they both said again, Poilievre. And I said, yes, but do you know who you're going to be voting for, the name you're going to be putting an X next to on the ballot? And they both said again, Poilievre. And I said, yes, but Poilievre isn't on the ballot. And they said, what do you mean? Now, these are two guys in and around 20 years of age in university. One is studying business, another is in a science program. So they probably never aren't well educated in the matter of Canadian civics. And so they are not, we're not familiar with the fact that the way that democracy in Canada works. And they probably watched a bit of the debate, have decided they like Poilievre better than Carney or Singh or any of the other leaders. And so they want Poilievre to be prime minister. But when they go to vote in their riding in Mississauga, the name Poilievre, Carney, Jagmeet Singh, they will not be on the ballot. Instead, there will be local candidates. So I thought, why not put out a video explaining, in case there are younger Canadians, I'm 58. I've been voting in federal, provincial, municipal elections for 40 years now. And I know the difference. I studied political science at university, but that's hardly a requirement to understand the system. Most people do, of my age, who have been voting. What happens is yes, we are having an election. However, in a fashion, it's actually 343 separate elections. Canada is divided into 343 electoral districts, commonly referred to as ridings. And each riding has its own unique ballot. If you are living in the riding called Nepean, which is just, it's part of Ottawa. If you're in the Nepean area of Ottawa, when you're handed your ballot, it will have the name Mark Carney on it, but it will not have the name Pierre Poilievre or Jagmeet Singh or Elizabeth May. It'll have none of the other party leaders' name on it. If you're in the Ottawa area riding of Carleton, you'll be handed a ballot and Poilievre's name will be on that ballot, but you will not see the name Mark Carney, Jagmeet Singh, or Elizabeth May. If you're in Burnaby South in British Columbia, when you're handed your ballot, it will have the name Jagmeet Singh, but it won't have Carney or Poilievre or May. And that this may be confusing to younger Canadians. I want to vote for Poilievre. I want to vote for Carney. I want to vote for Singh. Their name isn't on my ballot. If you're in Mississauga, which is where these young lads are located, their ballot will contain no Carney, no Poilievre, no Jagmeet Singh, no Elizabeth May, no Maxime Bernier, and certainly not Yves Francois Blanchet, the leader of the Bloc Québécois. So who do you vote for? Well, the way that Canadian elections work is, again, we're having in a fashion, it's like having 343 separate elections. You are voting to decide who you want to represent you in Ottawa. And most of the candidates on the ballot you are handed will be affiliated with one party or another. There will likely, almost certainly, be a candidate for the Liberals, for the Conservatives, for the NDP, for the Green. There may be PPC. There may be independent candidates. There may be smaller, less known parties like the Christian Heritage Party. They may have a candidate in your riding. And so what you then do is if you're deciding based on who you want to be prime minister, and if your decision is you want Pierre Poilievre to be prime minister, then you look at the names, and next to the names will be their party affiliation. So if you want Pierre Poilievre to be prime minister of Canada, and if you're voting strictly on the basis of who you want to be prime minister, then you will put your X in the circle corresponding to the Conservative candidate. If you want Mark Carney to be Prime Minister of Canada, you will look and you will see which candidate is affiliated with the Liberal Party of Canada and put an X in that corresponding circle. And likewise with Jagmeet Singh. If he's the man you want to be the Prime Minister of Canada, if that's the basis of your vote, unless you're in Burnaby South, his name isn't on the ballot. So you look for the candidate who's affiliated with the New Democratic Party, the NDP, and you put your X there. And that is the way that Canadian elections work. And then in each one of the 343 ridings, the ballot boxes will be open, the ballots will be counted, and whichever candidate gets the most votes is the one who gets to go to Ottawa, gets a seat in our House of Commons, and they represent that riding. Most typically, they go as either a member of the Conservatives, Liberals, NDP, Green. If you're in English speaking Canada, it's going to be one of those four in all likelihood. If you're in Quebec, la belle province de Québec, vous avez un autre choix. Il y a une partie, le Bloc québécois. Et le chef de le Bloc québécois, c'est Yves-François Blanchet. Et son nom, c'est pas sur le bulletin de vote. Donc, il faut choisir le candidat qui est un représentatif, un candidat pour le parti, le Bloc québécois. Et il faut mettre le X à côté de le cercle, à côté le nom de le candidat qui est un représentatif de le Bloc québécois. I throw that out in French just for any Quebecers who are in there, because in the Quebec ballots, there will be Bloc Québécois candidates as well. Confusing country that we live in, is it not? So what happens at the end of the voting? My riding is called Northumberland Clark. And in my riding, I attended the local all candidates meeting, and we have candidates from the Conservative Party, the Liberal Party, the NDP, the Green, the People's Party of Canada. We have a candidate running for the Christian Heritage Party, that's 6. And then we have someone running independent, meaning they're not affiliated with any party. And so there will be 7 names on the ballot. I am voting Conservative. And so I know the name of the Conservative candidate in my riding Northumberland Clark. It's Philip Lawrence. So my X goes next to the name Philip Lawrence, and next to his name, it says Conservative Party of Canada. The ballots go into the box and they're counted once the polls close on April 28th, and they're open, they're counted. And whichever candidate in my riding of Northumberland Clark, whichever one gets the most votes, they don't have to have 50% plus one. If 10,000 votes are cast, the winning candidate does not need to get 5,001. It's simply a matter of whoever gets the most, even if that's only 30%, depending on the way things break down. 30% could be enough to win the seat. Whoever gets the most votes then goes to Ottawa and they occupy a seat in our House of Commons, and there are 343 seats in total. And then whichever party has the most elected members, that party will then form the next government. And it's simply a question at that point of whether they will be in a majority situation or a minority situation. If a party wins 173 or more seats, they have a majority. And that means that when they want to pass legislation, they only need members of their own party voting in favor, and there aren't enough votes in the opposition benches to defeat it. However, if they're under 173, then they don't have enough votes and they have to look across the aisle, is the way you might frame it. They look across and they will need to get some votes from the opposition parties and they need to get to at least 173 votes. If they don't get to 173 votes, the legislation they're putting forward is defeated. Anyway, that's going a little deeper into the weeds, but on voting day, when you're casting your ballot, you're not going to see, in all likelihood, unless you're in Carleton, Nepean, or Burnaby South out in British Columbia. If you're not in one of those three ridings, then you're not going to see any of the names Pierre Poilievre, Mark Carney, or Jagmeet Singh on your ballot. So there are 341 ridings in Canada that have none of those names on it. Every ballot for each riding, there are 343 different ballots. If you're in Pierre Poilievre's riding of Carleton, you're going to have, I think it's 90 plus names to choose from. And that is because there's an organization that doesn't like our system of voting, first past the post. And I think it's just one individual, but doesn't matter. What they've done is they've registered 90 or so candidates. And so when you get your ballot, if you're in Carleton, you're going to have 90 names, and most of them are going to be independent. I have Don Curver or Couvet, Drew Couvet or Couver, 56. Is writing, so we need to make sure the Libs don't get 173. If the Liberals get 172 or less, they are in a minority situation. However, since 2019, the Liberals have been able to rule with a minority because they've gotten something called the Supply Side Confidence Agreement from the NDP. The NDP agreed to support the Liberal Party to pass their legislation because in Canadian parliamentary democracy, it's a system called the New Westminster Parliamentary System of Democracy. If the opposition parties put forward a motion of no confidence, and if a majority of the votes are in favor of no confidence, that would mean an election. The government's defeated, Parliament is dissolved, and Canadians go to the polls. Likewise, if the government puts forward legislation that has spending attached to it, they call it a money bill. If a money bill is put forward, and if that money bill is defeated like a budget, then that's an automatic vote of no confidence, and it means that the parliament again is dissolved and Canadians go to an immediate election. That happened all the way back in 1980 when I was, I don't know how old I would have been. I was young, 14 or so. years of age. And that happened. What happened was the Joe Clark-led conservatives of that time, Joe Clark had been elected in 1979 in a minority, and he put forward a budget, and all the conservatives voted yes, but all the liberals and all the NDP voted against it. And there were more votes against the budget than there were for. So the government was defeated, and Canadians went into another election in 1980. So, however, that was back then in Parliament, there were Liberal, NDP, and there was a third, Liberals, Conservative, NDP, and there was a fourth party called the Social Credit Party, but they only had 6 members. And they, in that important vote that toppled the government, the Social Credit actually abstained. That meant they decided they weren't going to vote. They kind of had the hammer. If they had voted in with the Joe Clark-led conservatives, then his government would have survived, the budget would have passed. But they didn't know whether to vote in favor or against, and so they abstained from voting. They said, we're not going to vote. And so the combination of the Liberal votes with the NDP was more than what the Conservatives had. Let's see what Drew is writing. From Jugmeat, I met him 3 weeks ago. Worst day of my life. I'm not a fan of Jugmeat Singh, but normally on my channel, I'm a little more partisan. I've already stated I'm voting conservative. However, for the purposes of this video, in the interest of drawing some attention from younger voters who maybe are a little confused about what's going on, these 2 nephews of mine, smart kids, they're in university. Again, one studying business and the other one studying in a science-related program. And they thought when they were handed their ballot, they thought they would be marking an X next to the name Pierre Poilievre. And they thought they would see on their ballot Pierre Poilievre, Jagmeet Singh, Mark Carney, maybe Elizabeth May. And they're like, well, who am I voting for? And I said, you don't have to worry. If you want to vote for Pierre Poilievre, if you want him to be the prime minister, if you want the Conservatives to win, then you simply put an X next to the candidate who has Conservative Party of Canada next to his or her name. So, let's see. Drew is writing that we should podcast the election night. I may just do a live. I've done a live, and some of them, the one I did when Trinity Bellwood by-election in downtown Toronto, I forget, it was some months ago, back August, September, there was a by-election. Because what happens sometimes in our parliament is that someone gets sick and dies. Someone takes another job and vacates their seat. There's any number of reasons why a seat can be left vacant. And then what the government does is it calls a by-election. It's kind of a special election just for that riding. And the Conservatives won handily what had been for like 30 years a Liberal Party seat. Typically speaking, the Liberals have tended to they've done well, typically, for the last number of years in large urban centers, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, maybe not so much Vancouver, I don't know. Vancouver, BC is kind of an NDP, has been an NDP stronghold, but things are changing. The landscape is constantly in flux. Drew is asking, how can I find your email? I'll tell you what it is right now. It's also in the description where I, say my podcasts handle, I cover current news and events. I give my thoughts, views, opinions on it. 58-year-old, born in 1966, Canadian Armed Forces veteran, left the forces in June of 2021. Live in Brighton, Ontario, Northumberland County, but I've also lived in Burlington, North Bay, downtown Toronto, Pickering, Ajax, Whitby, Kingston, Quebec, La Ville de Quebec, Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu. I've lived all over. So I give a little brief bio, and then my email address is canadiansoapbox@gmail.com. All one word, canadiansoapbox@gmail.com. And that's kind of what I'm doing here. I'm standing up on my soapbox. That's an old expression where people would go into the public square and they take a soapbox, which is a wooden crate, stand up on it and start saying, "Listen to me." Which is kind of what YouTube is kind of like. It's a soapbox. Um, Drew saying, send me an email. We are similar in class, brother. I will stop chatting, but send me a message. I cannot find your email, Addie. Would love to chat sometime. And Eat Me is here. Oh man, Gordon, you pulled me out of a really clear footage of OKC bombing. Wow, the old Timothy McVeigh story. I decided to do a live video because I like to do them live. It's just easier. And, when I do them pre-recorded, then I look at it before I upload it and I go, oh, I don't like that. I want to do it again. And this way, yeah, it is what it is. And I like my channel to be authentic. I don't want it to be dressed up. I like my bare bones, no production value. It's one man talking, one man's opinions, unvarnished, no veneer. What you see is what you get. My battery is running low, so I'm grabbing the cord. I just run off a simple laptop. Nothing, no great shakes. And again, I like it that way. Um, Again, Drew, my email address is canadiansoapbox@gmail.com. I'll look for an email from you later today. Um, and Eat Me, who is in Montreal, Montrealaise, is saying greetings. Uh, And then whale oil beef is here. Whale is from British Columbia. So it's not too bad there. It's only 12:07 in British Columbia. It's 3:07. I was 4 hours on the 401 driving from Mississauga to Brighton. And it's about 175 kilometers. Should be like a 2 hour-ish drive. If there's no traffic and moving along at about a buck 10, I can do it in about an hour and 45 minutes. Tonight, it took over 4 stinking hours to get from Mississauga to Brighton. And it took 3 hours plus to get there. I was 7.5 hours driving today, suffering from numb rear end. My butt went numb. Hate it. Hate the 401. Hate driving. I hate I don't mind driving. I like driving when I get to drive. I hate being stuck in traffic. It's so annoying. Anyway, what's Whale saying? He's saying, in the end, in my opinion, NDP will align with the Libs, just like in the Ottawa vote that brought in UN troops declaring war on the freedom movement. Whale and I are very much, most of the people who come onto my live chats are very much in agreement with me with respect to all things COVID. The reason I left the Canadian Armed Forces was because of the jabs. In December of 2020, when they were originally authorized for use, you didn't need to be a genius. I knew that the forces would mandate them, that it would be a requirement. And that if I were to refuse to take them, that I could then be charged with disobeying a lawful order. So in December of 2020, they weren't yet mandated on forces members. And so at that point, I chose to submit something called a voluntary release. It's in my 50s, 54 at that time, I guess. And I said, I'm old, my knees, my wife has some health issues. I have a young son. I think it's time. And then it takes 6 months when you submit a voluntary release. It has to go through the chain of command. It had to go from the warrant to the major, from the major to the light colonel, from the light colonel to the colonel, from the colonel to Ottawa. And everyone has to give it their blessing. And then after 6 months, I got out. so that my release was dated, my request to get out was dated December 1st, and my last day in uniform was June 1st, 6 months later. And, with respect to what Whale is writing, what happened in Ottawa during the trucker convoy protest when Canadians were exercising their constitutional and charter rights to protest. It was disgusting what happened in this country. Whale citing, UN troops having been brought in. We saw a woman who lives not far from me, a member of the Mohawk Nation on the Tyendinaga Reserve, an elderly woman, an older woman with a walker, and she was run over by a mounted police. Why? For exercising her constitutional right to protest. And then hardworking Canadians who, again, exercising their constitutional rights, had their bank accounts frozen. And that's the kind of thing you would expect if you were living in a communist dictatorship like China, not in a free and democratic society like Canada. And Mark Carney, it must be remembered, from 2020 forward, has been an advisor to the Trudeau Liberals. So if you like the way this country, now I'm going to get a little more partisan. I'm going to be a little more rah-rah conservatives. Let's go Pierre Poilievre. If you like the way this country is going, if you like the doubling of housing costs, the rising inflation, the rampant crime, if you think that Canada is heading in the right direction, well, then vote for Mark Carney and the Liberals. But if you think Canada has gone off the rails, and these two young nephews, my wife's sister's two oldest sons who are in university, they said Canada is going off the rails. They recognize it. They just didn't know that when they go to the when they go to their polling station, they thought they would see on the ballot the names of the leaders. And I explained to them that no, whatever your riding is, Mississauga North, South, East, West, Mississauga Central, Mississauga this, Mississauga is probably in and around 1 million people. So they probably have somewhere around 10 ridings just in Mississauga alone. Contrast that with my area, and my area, geographically bigger than what Mississauga is, but very sparsely populated. All of Brighton, all of Colborne, all of Port Hope, all of Coburg, all of it is just one riding. But it'll be roughly equal in population size to one riding in Mississauga. But because Mississauga has 1 million or so people, they'll have about 10 ridings. My whole big area only has one seat, Mississauga 10. And I think there's a Main Street research poll that just came out. It came out April 20th, and it was done in the wake after the leader debate. And I've got to look up. The Conservatives have vaulted back into the lead. Momentum is very much with the Conservatives right now. Pierre Poilievre absolutely crushed it during the debate. He just crushed it. And I'm just waiting for I posted it to my Facebook feed before going live. And here we go. Come on. Latest Main Street research poll dated April 20th. Now the Liberals have fallen into second place. The Conservatives are back in the lead, 42 to 38%. 42 to 38. And this was a poll with a 2.7% margin of error. That's according to Main Street's methodology. I went on to the website 338.com to see if they've updated it, and they haven't. Because I want to see what that does to their rolling numbers. I keep an eye on this stuff. I'm an old warhorse political junkie, And so I'm curious. And man, oh man, I was thinking this would be a short video, and now I've got 8 people showing up. You've given me 2 thumbs up already. Thank you. I've added about 15, 20 subscribers over the last couple weeks. Channel's growing a bit. I appreciate it. Thank you. If you're not subscribed, I would appreciate you hitting that subscription button. You can, if you want to be notified when I'm live, you need to hit the bell, and then you'll be notified that there's a live stream going on. You can fill up the live chat like Drew, like Eat Me, like Whale, like everyone here. Now, what else? A number of things are being written. And Drew is writing saying good evening to Eat Me. What? That can't be a name. Everyone, a lot of people have usernames. I go by my own name, Gordon Causey. I'm a real person. I'm a Canadian, born in Port Colborne, Ontario, a little small town. We lived when I was born, my family, mom and dad, and my sister, we were living in a town called Ridgeway, Ontario, but that's even smaller than Port Colborne. Port Colborne is where the hospital is. It's near Crystal Beach. And I have something of a unique perspective because when I was 6 months old, my dad worked for one of the big Canadian banks that has their international operations out of New York City, and he got transferred. And so we were down living in New York City. I don't remember it. I was in diapers. Um, this is back when the Maple Leafs last won a Stanley Cup, and we were living in Staten Island, New York, which is one of the 5 boroughs of New York City. And then later we made our way over to New Jersey, and I went to kindergarten, grade 1, 2, 3, 4. I was Canadian growing up in the United States. I was playing hockey down in Westwood, New Jersey. My dad on Sunday mornings had to drive me 45 minutes to an hour from our town called Glen Rock. The only place he could find to get his son into hockey was in Westwood, and we played on a figure skating rink that was rectangular. It didn't have corners. It didn't have the rounded corners. You couldn't shoot the puck down around the end boards because if you shot it down, down the side, dunk, it stopped there. You couldn't whip it around. It was a unique experience playing hockey in in Westwood, New Jersey. I like talking about um, my time growing up. I did have a good time growing up down in New Jersey. And then that was when I was in grade 4 during the school year. We moved from Glen Rock, New Jersey to Burlington, Ontario. And I was amazed to finally play on a real hockey rink and amazed in Westwood, New Jersey, there were only 2 teams for every age group. So you never had to worry what team you were playing. It was always the Blues against the White, the Westwood Whites or the Westwood Blues. Those were the 2 teams. And now I'm playing in Burlington, Ontario, where they actually had an A division, a B division, and a C division based on skill level. You went out for like a tryout, a skills type thing, and the coaches evaluated you, and they put you into A, B, or C. That's how big hockey was in Burlington. And I finished grade 4, did all of grade 5 in Burlington, and then I spent a year living in Portland, Oregon, and then just 1 year. And then the summer I was turning 12, we moved back to Canada, and I've been Canadian ever since. Served in the army, traveled all over, been up to Wainwright, Alberta, been to Oromocto, Gagetown, New Brunswick, Meaford, Shiloh, Manitoba. I never want to go back to Shiloh, Manitoba. Not in February, not for winter warfare exercises where you're having to dig yourself at what they call an improvised shelter. Where you're basically setting yourself up inside a snowbank and sleeping in it, in your sleeping bag, of course. Anyway, let's see what else is being written. A number of things. Um, Eat Me is writing that she voted today. They gave me a pencil, asked for a pen. The lady said it was not accepted. Asked, go check. She came back with a pen. You can vote with a pen. You can vote with a pencil, but I'm going to tell you, Eat Me, ne ta fait pas. Don't worry about it. So long as there's an X clearly marked in the appropriate circle for one candidate, you're fine. I have been a scrutineer in numerous different places. I've never seen anything untoward. I have seen petty little arguments break out between scrutineers. That vote shouldn't count. Their X went out of the circle. And I've even argued for votes that were not for the candidate I was supporting at the time, going, it's obvious. That's the candidate they were voting for. Leave it be. Come on. You're not, why are you supporting that? I went, so long as a person, the vote that they wanted to make is registered, that's all that counts. And you might have someone with Parkinson's disease, with some, neurological disorders, handshakes. And so they didn't stay perfectly within the circle. They came a little out. So what? Typically, I mean, you don't have to worry whether it's in pen or pencil. You don't have to worry. Either one is good, just so long as your intention is clearly marked. Drew is writing what's happening in BC also. Drew is saying I'm a delegate in Vancouver Quadra. That's John Turner's old writing, and am convinced and am connected to BC. It's going to be close in Vancouver, but the rest of BC, it's all conservative. Yes, I, like the Fraser Valley will be solidly conservative. Kelowna will be solidly conservative. But when you get into Vancouver and Victoria, NDP typically does well, but they have cratered. They have cratered. This Main Street research poll that I was talking about, I think they have the NDP all the way down at just 6%. Just checking. I'm just checking the actual poll. I'll give you the link in the live chat if anyone wants to check. This is from Main Street Research. There are so many different polling outfits in Canada, but there it is in the live chat, the link. And yeah, the NDP is at 6% nationally. The Bloc Québécois, which only runs candidates in Quebec, so only in the 80 plus ridings in Quebec and none in the rest, they're at 6%. The Green Party they have at just 1%, the Greens, and the PPC is actually double the Greens at 2%, which is amazing that the PPC has doubled. The Green Party's been around now probably for 40 plus years, and this would only be 2019, 2021. This is only the third, I think this is only the third election with the PPC, third or fourth, and they're already double the support of the Green Party. However, it took the Green Party 20 plus years to elect their first member, Elizabeth May. Maxime Bernier is not going to be if the PPC continues to exist after Maxime Bernier retires. Well, then they might elect, but it's never going. They're not going to elect any members while he's the leader. They just haven't done the groundwork yet. I'm just going to read the last few messages and then I'm going to call it a night because I thought this would be quick. And I hope some younger people do tune in. I got a cute little thumbnail of a hipster young kid with the tats and the piercings, voting. I got that off a free image flip site. And that's how I do my thumbnails. Hopefully it'll attract some younger people, although YouTube as a platform tilts heavily older, heavily male. So do young kids still use YouTube? I don't think they use it as much. They're more into TikTok, Instagram. We're going to see what happens. We may be in an election that is so close that BC will finally matter, that the voters in BC, it's got to be annoying to be out in British Columbia and you haven't even voted yet, maybe, because that used to happen in years past. And they've already called the election. We haven't even counted our votes yet. I don't even know what happened in BC, and you're already saying the Liberals won a minority or the Conservatives won a minority or whatever. You know, what about BC? Yeah, you guys don't matter. Even without your seats being counted, even without the vote results from BC, we already know the winner. This year could be different. This year it could be so tight. And that's my prediction. I think it's going to be incredibly tight. I think I'm going to make a prediction before voting day, but right now I'm leaning towards saying it's going to be a conservative win. It's just a question of how much. Are they going to win a minority, or could they billow back up into majority territory? There's so many things that can happen, though. I genuinely think there's going to be a massive concerted effort to. They're going to try and go after Pierre Poilievre. Watch out. That is a prediction. I do think they're going to come at him hard. And I remember the way that the CTV network, Bell Media, took down Patrick Brown. Now, you don't have to like Pat, you can like Patrick Brown or you can hate him, doesn't matter. Patrick Brown was poised to be the next premier of Ontario. And CTV went to air with false allegations saying, and this was right during the so-called Me Too era, and they went to air with false allegations that Patrick Brown had sexually assaulted a high school student many years earlier. And Patrick Brown was able to prove it to be demonstrably and impossible, completely false. One allegation. The second allegation came someone who worked on his staff, and there was a function. Patrick Brown every year in Barrie would have a hockey night in Barrie charity event at the arena where the Barrie Colts play OHL, big arena. And he'd have NHL players, celebrities come, and they'd raise money for charity. And then after the charity event, they'd go back to his house and have an after event party. Only thing is, Patrick Brown does not drink. He does not consume alcohol at all. As a young teenager, he made a promise to his mother. Apparently, someone close to the mother had alcohol related death or disease or something. And Patrick Brown's mother asked him, "Promise me you'll never drink." And Patrick Brown made that promise and honored that promise. So he didn't drink at all. However, a young staffer who worked for him, apparently, by all accounts, from everyone who was there who gave an account, she got ripped. She was three sheets to the wind, and she was coming on to Patrick Brown, a single guy. And according to all the eyewitness accounts, Patrick Brown rebuffed her and had her driven home. But CTV went to air with allegations reported by Rachel Aiello. Rachel Aiello is friends with the person making the accusation. That is a total abrogation of journalistic ethics at the most basic level. If you're a journalist reporting on a story, you do not report on a story where you have a direct relationship when someone is making allegations, especially something as serious as that could completely blow up Ontario's democracy. And yet CTV allowed Rachel Aiello, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing her name exactly right, to go to air. And people wonder why Canadians have said, screw the mainstream media. They have no business reporting to Canadians when they have shown themselves to be horribly ethically bankrupt. And that's CBC, that's CTV, and that's global. I could do a whole 2 hour long podcast talking about all the instances that clearly demonstrate that CBC, CTV, and global, that they have no journalistic ethics. And that is why Canadians are not stupid. Yeah, they have high production values. Yes, they've got the makeup and the lighting and the sound, and they sound good. They have gone to journalism school. They've learned how to sit on their coat and look good. They've learned how to enunciate properly. They've learned how to present the news, but they've also learned how to propagandize it by using loaded, pejorative, emotionally driven words. And we saw it during the COVID era. The tsunami of death continues. What? Tsunami of death? I heard that on the nightly newscasts. Terrifying news from Calgary, where another 50 whatever. You don't do not tell me to be terrified. Just give me the news, give me the numbers. I will decide how I react. But that's not the way our media operates now. I say it all the time. They want to program you, not inform you, program you. They're going to tell you what to think, what to believe, and even how to feel about it. And that's not ethical journalism. Rant over. Um, Drew is saying, remind everyone to bring their own pen to the ballot. Pen, pencil, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's this kind of thing, this whole pen, pencil argument stuff. It leads those who are inclined toward the liberal side to go, I don't want to associate with those people. Everything's a conspiracy. Everything's a conspiracy. There are conspiracies. People do conspire. Powerful interests do conspire, but not everything is a conspiracy. Drew is saying, I heard your Staten Island childhood story. Let's hear more about your service. I didn't, I joined late. I joined the Canadian Armed Forces late in life, age of 43, joined in 2010. Went into the communications branch, SIGOP, signals operator. Had to get my top secret security clearance, seeing as that's, you know, in the news because Pierre Poilievre doesn't want the gag order associated with it. And so he's holding off on getting his until he's elected to government as opposed to opposition. And I was posted to CFLRS in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, did my basic training, went to Kingston, did my trades training, also did training at Oromocto or CFB Gagetown, Shiloh, Manitoba, Meaford. And then so I was in Kingston for a year. And then after that, I was posted to Valcartier, Quebec. I actually asked for that posting because my French, I was already bilingual in joining the military, but my French was poor. I'd never lived the language. I had actually worked in sales and marketing as a sales and marketing executive for a number of different Toronto companies. And I always end up handling the French accounts. However, my French, as I had to keep it very limited. I had to stick to the vocabulary I needed, and I couldn't go much beyond that. And even then, I had trouble, but I could get by. And so I wanted a posting to Valcartier because I wanted to be in a French area where I could fully immerse myself and become fully bilingual. And I'm not fully bilingual, but I'm close. I'm probably about as good as I can get. I was better when I left Valcartier. I was there from 2011, 2015. But and then from 2015 until 2021, I was posted to CFB Trenton, largest, busiest Air Force base in Canada. It's the biggest operational base. It's from whence all the bases around Canada are supplied. So, alert. They need equipment. They need supplies. They come from CFB Trenton and they go up to alert, or they go to Iqaluit, or they go to wherever. We have bases all over. Thule. Um, anyway, a little bit. And Eatme is saying that the last time a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup, 1993. And don't tell that to me because that was the year when Wayne Gretzky sticked Doug Gilmour in the face, should have been in the penalty box for 10 minutes with that, and he couldn't have come out until the full 10 minutes had been served. But Kerry Fraser, it was right in front of him. He claims he never saw it. And as a result, Wayne Gretzky scored the winning goal that forced a Game 7 back in Toronto. And had Toronto won that Game 6 or Game 7, we would have had a Stanley Cup for the ages. It would have been Toronto against Montreal. And that would have been the first Stanley Cup final between the Leafs and Montreal since 1967. And now, because both Montreal and Toronto are in the Eastern Conference, there cannot be a Stanley Cup final between them. If Montreal can manage to beat Washington, which is a tall order, then, and if Toronto can beat Ottawa, then we'll have a playoff series between the Leafs and the Canadiens, which would be the first time since 1978. And you talk about the two biggest hockey meccas in the world would be going toe to toe. Please, come on, Montreal, beat Washington. I'd want to see a playoff series between Montreal and Toronto. I want to see it. I don't even care if Toronto loses. I want them to win. But even if they were to lose, just the experience of having the two biggest hockey meccas in the world going head to head, that would be amazing. It's like the New York Yankees and LA Dodgers in the World Series we just had. So anyway, we can hope. Whale saying the good old hockey game, the best game in the land. Oh, the good old hockey game. It's the best game you can name. And the best game you can name is the good old hockey game. First period. Hello out there. We're on the air. It's hockey night tonight. Oh, I'm Canadian. I know my Stompin' Tom. I know Sudbury Saturday Night. I know Bud the Spud. I know Big Joe Muffleraw. I had Stompin' Tom albums. Tilsonburg. My back still aches when I hear that word. I should have my name on this station as Gordy Canuck, because notwithstanding my 10 years growing up in the United States as a kid, wasn't my choice. My dad had moved us down there. I am as Canadian. I bleed maple syrup. So I know this country inside out. Not perfectly. I haven't spent much time out west. I haven't been to PI yet. I've been to Newfoundland. I loves Newfoundland. I loves doing my Newfie accent. Lots of fun. Love love going to Petty Harbor and to St. John's and to Rocky Harbor. I didn't kiss the cod though. Anyway, what else is being written? Um, Eat Me is writing, the problem with Bernier's party is that he is the head honcho. There is no race um, to who will be head of the PPs. Yeah, that's the biggest issue. And I thought I had put up, but it's not letting me do it. I had a message to put out here, and it's not letting me do it. I wanted to share the Main Street research poll, but you can look it up yourself. And this is I love technical issues. I'm such a techie guy. There we go. So she's saying that the problem with Bernier's party, that he's the head honcho, there's no race as to who will be the head after him. Yeah, they have no constitution. It's a cult of personality. And after voting PPC in 2019, 2021, sorry, Max, I like Pierre Poilievre. I like him. I do. I genuinely like that man. What I know of him, which I only know the public persona, but the public persona that I see, I like. He's incredibly sharp. He's got depth. He came from, he was adopted. And I know kids. I know people, adults, and who have been adopted, and that is tough. Adoption is tough because people who have been adopted out, it's a common, from what I understand, it's a common psychological trait. is there's an aching question of why was I given away? Was I not good enough? There's this, and Pierre Poilievre's adoptive parents did an amazing job. They did an amazing job with that man. He grew up to be an outstanding, stellar individual from everything I can see. And I think they're going to come at him hard. Could they do something like they did with Patrick Brown and make up phony allegations of sexual assault? I don't think so. I don't think they'd even try that now. I don't even think they would try that now. The Me Too era has passed. We saw how the mainstream media took down a political figure with false allegations. I don't think they could do it in that respect, but they're going to try. That's my thinking. I'll try and do this again. There's something I can't pin it because it doesn't like the link. It's a PDF file. But if you, what I'll do is I'll put it in the chat. I'll put it in the comment section when the video's done. I'm going to end off there. I've gone on for an hour. So hopefully some young people watched at the beginning and got this, the skinny on what's going to happen on voting day. And the last day for advanced polling is tomorrow. So you don't have to wait until Monday, the 28th. You can go in tomorrow between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. You can go onto the Elections Canada website. Just Google Elections Canada, go to their website, and you can make sure you're on the voter list. You can find out where your advanced polling station is or where your polling station will be on actual voting day, and they may not be in the same place. So we'll end off there. And I'll end it the way I always do. Easter Sunday, where I was just out in Mississauga with family. What's the greatest news the world has ever heard? Forget the election, forget Pierre Poilievre, forget Mark Carney, forget Jagmeet Singh, Yves-François Blanchet, forget Elizabeth May. The greatest news that the world has ever known is that the tomb was empty, that he is alive. The cross, is bare. Jesus is risen. There is hope in the world. Even though we're broken, we're fallen, we're sinful, we are reconciled through the blood of the Lamb. And so the blessing is this: may the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. And may the Lord grant you peace and get into a relationship through his son. And you can be granted that peace, so that no matter how rocky things are, no matter how high the waves on this sea of life that we're all trying to traverse, we can walk on water. And I like what he writes: Jesus is salvation. Today he was reborn. The tomb is empty. So God bless, and I'll probably do a video tomorrow evening. Got a busy day ahead, so we'll talk to you later. Thank you everyone for showing up. Drew, I'll look for your email. I didn't see an email address for you in the live chat. I didn't see one that I can send to you. So CanadianSoapbox@gmail.com. I'll look for an email from you tomorrow. God bless. Talk to you soon.